And in fact, United States oil production peaked in 1973. He was off by 3 years on a prediction made in 1956. And that has held true. It doesn't matter what technology you invent, it peaks. And using M. King Hubbard's calculus, and you can look it up, it's equation from Sunday, there was a report in Science this week, and there's always some argument as to when and where. We are either at, have just passed, or are about to pass peak oil globally. It doesn't matter how much you find more, it doesn't matter technology, you will have hit the peak. What does that mean? This is from the World Energy Outlook prepared by the International Energy Agency. This is their projection. This is their projection. I'll read, I know this is hard to read, so I'll point it out. Here is today. The dark is crude oil currently producing in 2000. Red was unconventional oil. This shale oil, some weird stuff. And then basically other liquids, right? Non-gas liquids. 2008, more or less the same. Whoa, what happens by 2030? By 2030, in 20 years, that is the shortfall. That is the shortfall, okay? Sustained investments needed to combat decline in output in existing fields. For those who are not petroleum engineers, once a field starts to produce, it begins to decline, right? Once you start emptying the glass, you know, it goes down. The rate of decline may vary from field to field and how much technology you use to keep it producing, but they will all decline at different rates. And they make assumptions at the rate of decline. So let me put this a different way. This is going to be hard to read because I had to scan this one too. This is also from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. If you notice, today, we're at 2009, this number is roughly, it's hard to read, but scaling is about 85, 86 million barrels of oil consumed every day. Okay, that's our millions of barrels of oil per day. And they are assuming a slight increase to somewhere in, you know, but not much. But let's make an assumption. Let's assume this was a straight line. You can see that this blue area is what has to be discovered. Let me put that in numbers for you. In order for us to maintain our current rate of consumption of oil globally, right? It doesn't go up and then go down. Means between now and the year 2030, we must discover and develop into production an amount of oil equivalent to 4 Saudi Arabias. You look at the history of oil for 150 years, nothing has ever come close to the size of the reserves in Saudi Arabia. And you don't have to just find one, you'd have to find 4 and develop them. All of which points to an immense challenge. China's replaced the U.S. as the leading consumer-based commodities. I don't know who did this typeface on me. By 2030, if they continue to use the resources as inefficiently as they do now, they would consume 99 million barrels of oil a day by themselves. World production is 85 million barrels per day. If they continue on the path that they are now, basically energy production, energy inefficiency, that's what they'll consume. Now that's kind of a, you know, the sky is falling thing because they will get more efficient. But nevertheless, that's just China. You can imagine you have 1 billion people in China and 1 billion people in India. At this point, we're not talking about climate change and the consequence of using energy. We are merely talking about the availability of energy to use. Where are oil prices headed? You can figure that one out. Let's talk about natural gas production. This is world natural gas production, and you can see fields yet to be developed. Now, natural gas is in a better state because of new technology in the U.S. having to do with unconventional gas, tight gas. Most of it's in the U.S. at this point. But nevertheless, an interesting, and The peak oil conversation that Hubbard did, that calculus does not apply to gas. It was not done in connection with gas. It's a different geology there. I can click that all I want. That won't do me good. This is interesting. This is the amount of wealth transferred by the non-oil producing states to oil producing states for the period 1995 through 2007. Even if you met every goal in Copenhagen, the 450 scenario, parts per million, if Copenhagen all the way through 2050 was a home run, this, between 2008 and 2030, you will have transferred 4 times as much wealth to the oil-producing countries as you did in the prior 20 years. If you think about what that means, that disproportionate wealth being channeled to areas where there is a lack of transparency in government, lack of democracy, lack of women's rights, what does that tell you about the political structure of the universe, right? That's if Copenhagen is an immense success and beyond, all the way to 2050, and that's if you don't. Now, just because I want to make sure that you're not feeling really happy quite yet, let's talk about the water problem. Ta-da, no problem. However, in this report, Charting Our Water Future, again, you'll get the slide, the Water Resources Group, brand new report, just came out. I'll read this to you. The bottom line is, you're running out of fresh water. You can take your time. This is the hard chart to read in the distance. But fresh water, the IPCC in 2007 and related UN reports basically said by the year 2030, 2/3 of the population will have a hard time finding adequate fresh water. Another report, independent agency, same thing. Now, this is interesting. Look at these countries. India, by 2030, a shortage of 50%. China, by 2030, a shortage of 25%. Brazil, shortage of 14%. Africa, shortage of 17%. You can get to Europe, there'll be shortages there too. But these are big numbers. These are big numbers. Nations cannot deal with that kind of water shortage. It's not possible. That basically means 1 billion people with 50% less water than they need. 1 billion people with 25% less water than they need. Where are we going? Here's the good news, okay? The new administration is completely committed. None of it, I tell you the problem because I don't want anybody to think that any one individual is going to solve the problems of this magnitude. No one person created them, and no one person is going to solve them. The good news is that you've got the leadership. Any business person knows that leadership is critical to a successful agenda. And whereas in the prior administration we had some trouble with science, we don't have that problem at the moment. We've got leadership that really, really gets it. Challenge. Okay. Just some of the high points, and we'll get past all this stuff. Dr. Chu, the first scientist to really lead the DOE in decades. The guy gets it, Nobel Prize winner, has been a climate scientist for long before most of us realized it was a problem. So far this year, $80 billion in new investments in the U.S. on energy efficiency, energy security, alternatives, renewable green bill. Increased fuel efficiency standard up to 35.5 miles per gallon in 2016. That, the automobile industry fought that for 30 years. Barack got it done in a few months. The Clean Energy Act. So you'll never get a bill out of the House. It's pending in the Senate right now. Very important. Under the terms of the bill, as written, and if it passes, an 84% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2050. For anybody, by the way, who's stuck on the numbers in Copenhagen, let me tell you what that means.